Welcome to the AAI Lightning Lectures. The AAI aims to provide an accessible means of communication for those interested in the progress of architecture, to promote the study and practice of the allied arts and sciences, and to elevate the culture of architecture in Ireland. We're here today with Fishamble Architects, and I hope you enjoy.
Hey Ron, how are things?
Hello, how are you?
Good.
We got here James.
Can you see us?
And Liam. Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, good, man. Are you doing well?
Good, yeah. How are you guys doing? Where are you based now? What's this room behind you? Looks amazing. That Henrietta Street?
No, it's Fishamble Street. It's my grandparents' house.
Okay.
This is the
I
room
was
we
going to ask you where you got the name.
This is where we bring clients to intimidate them. To see all the death masks and things like that, just to keep people on their toes.
Very good. Is that how you got the name for Fishamble?
Yeah, we just cogged Grafton's idea, first office, give it the name, and it kind of means that you can go anywhere, you know, and still kind of have that little nod back to where it all began, where the magic started.
Great. Well, I'm just going to kick off then. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to James and Liam.
Thanks, Ron. Great to be involved. We're excited to kind of like just show a bit of a chronology of I suppose where we started, how we developed over the years, and it is kind of like a 10-year journey up to the point where we actually made things official in 2019. So I sort of set up a small practice in 2017. Liam came back from London then after the last recession. We shared an office space. And we were working on our own things, and then eventually it just became more and more apparent to us that collaborating on everything as we went forward would be the way to go.
Yeah. So I suppose the point of the slides today is we've been kind of working on and off together for maybe 10 years, or literally 10 years until this year, from when we graduated from college, and it kind of, unknowns to ourselves, was kind of the starting of a practice. And yeah, this has been a kind of an interesting exercise in reviewing that, especially through the unbuilt work, because a huge amount of the unbuilt work over those 10 years, or the design work over those 10 years has been unbuilt, which is kind of has been almost a surprise to us how much of a percentage of that is, but things are changing now, hopefully. So look, let's maybe get into it.
Yeah, so after graduation, we kind of came out of college in 2010 when we were sort of 3 years into a recession, and I'm sure you remember, Roland. It was you know, it wasn't easy to find work. Liam eventually sort of moved over to London. I stayed here. I found a little bit of work with the practice here, which eventually grew into something that was a bit more sustainable. But in sort of our off time, we felt that, you know, we may as well be productive. So with two of the other guys, Paul and Blaine from our year in college, we started doing a series of competitions. And the first one we kind of took on, and it's kind of this was the Mashtab Moscow housing competition. The official title of it was the perimeter housing competition, and we took that.
we completely bastardized that.
Yeah, we sort of took a route that this the perimeter was nonsense, and we ended up with, and it's kind of interesting to just go back and sort of think about the design process when you're kind of naive, a bit green around the gills. No, not green around the gills, no, green. So we kind of went for an idea that every block created its own perimeter, and that would kind of lead to some kind of social interaction with your neighbors. Entirely unsuccessful, but it was a lot of fun. I think what it proved was we could work together.
Yeah, exactly. And we over the next 2 or 3 years, we worked on 2 or 3 competitions with Paul, Blaine, another friend, Hugh, Queenan, and a few other people. And this is the result of another one of those, which was probably a little bit more successful from our point of view, which is a school of architecture in Quebec, which at the time we were delighted to be told that we were presented or shortlisted for the presentation, but turns out everyone who entered was. But you know, it was good fun at the time. We used them a lot to. You can probably see the difference between the last one and this one. We kind of developed a bit more of a 3D language, and literally just you know, our technical abilities with various computer programs. This was kind of, at the time, James was getting quite into Cinema 4D, and you know, this is a slightly more representable version of a scheme. Has serious flaws, but had some serious merit as well. Structurally, you're not too sure how it would have,
if it was ever going to stand up
the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the one thing that might become apparent at the end of this is we're now back to a point where we're looking at some competitions again in the practice, and it's interesting for us to reflect on these from 8-9 years ago, when our mindsets might have been slightly different, and sort of compare and contrast some of the work that we're doing now to the work that was back then.
So then also during the time that we were kind of again trying to be productive within a sort of a tricky work environment, or sort of an uncertain work environment, we were also taking on small individual commissions. Well, some of them weren't actually small. So again, these are just some of the examples of two of the projects that I sort of took on. Again, it was always good to, despite Liam being in the UK, we were kind of able to still bounce ideas off each other. You know, it's kind of early days of kind of cross water communication, which I suppose is kind of is just really back at the forefront now. But again, small little extensions, trying to draw on and develop a sort of a language and a style, and then some massive projects here. And I think for me, it kind of going back over this stuff, it kind of shows my sort of my naivety, not really, you know, the client for the project in Donabate, you know, modest €350,000 budget, trusting that to a 26-year-old, and then literally realizing down the line that one, there was just very little chance of something of this scale being built for that kind of money, and then how to kind of negotiate through that. So that actually got, you know, but that was actually a really, really interesting client. And eventually what happened was they just decided that it wasn't for them, and they decided to move out west. So that project didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, and likewise in the background, I was kind of working on some various individual projects myself. I was kind of involved with a builder down in Limerick and one in London. So he used to often forward me on clients who probably couldn't afford an architectural firm, but could afford an idea from a young Part 2 architect or nearly a Part 3 architect at the time. So these are just the result of a few of those. You know, some were generally domestic. It was kind of surprising to James and I both when we went back over our sort of back catalogue how many of these projects we probably did over those years. I mean, there's a crazy amount of ideas that you know, some of them I'd just completely forgotten about and might dig out again for projects in the future now. But you know, some of them, one or two of them happened. The majority of them didn't happen. These 4 didn't, and you know, plenty of others didn't. And we were kind of reflecting on the bizarre reasons why some of them went ahead and some didn't, like down to the fact that one in Tipperary, we were told that a Dublin architect would never get planning in Tipperary by the local councillor. So the client went with a local architect instead. There was one that James worked on that was a bit of a family dispute over some land that didn't allow it go ahead. And lots of just unusual stories like that. But there was, when we look back on them, there's probably some better ideas than I even remember, and definitely ones that I'll reflect on now and kind of try and learn on for works that we have in the office at the moment.
And this one was actually a kind of a really weird one. I think you know, I must have had, you know, pork chops covered in blue cheese that night, but actually it and this is bizarre, but it came to me in a dream, and it was this big yellow cheesy house, and just decided to draw it up, said it to the lads in London. Everyone broke their hearts laughing, and it's something that has always been with me. I always wanted to get it just kind of on hardline and draw it up, and there's lots of inspiration from Stanley Kubrick and all this kind of stuff, and it went nowhere. It was just a bit of fun. It was, and I felt maybe it would be a bit of fun to show you guys what, you know, just where some of the inspiration was coming from. And this was literally out of the blue, out of nowhere. But you never know, something like that might have legs. It might feed into what you do in your daily design process. But certainly something that was a bit of fun. I even had it sited in my parents' house. Obviously, they'd never let me do it, but yeah, a bit of fun there.
And I suppose this project's kind of maybe the beginning of an actual firm between James and I. It's an unusual one that I was involved with. I moved back from London in 2017, and my old firm, Fishamble Architects, this is a project I had dipped my toe into while I was working with them, and as I was working for myself here in Dublin, Clive had asked me to keep it going and get it into planning. So another girl who James and I were in college with, Alison Ray, who now has her own firm, also was kind of collaborating with me on it at the time, and James jumped in as well, and the three of us got it in for planning, and it successfully went through planning. So again, some of these renders James had put together, and that for us, and it's quite a nice little scheme, and one we're hoping it hasn't gone ahead. It is unbuilt. And it would be quite a tricky construction to build, but we'd be hoping it might come back in the future. And we're keeping in touch with Clive and people like that in London for things like this that might come back in the future.
So then this was probably the first kind of project that myself and Liam, when we were sitting in the same room, we kind of discussed an awful lot. It's a house in County Cavan, and some of I suppose what's interesting about this project is kind of maybe the economics of building within sort of like the urban centre in and around Dublin, versus a rural part of Ireland, in that the expectation potentially from clients is that you can build way more space. You can enclose way more space than you can than probably in a Dublin suburb or a Dublin outskirt, which we're trying. I suppose we're kind of like we're exploring that, but we haven't really seen it yet, you know. But obviously, you know, a client came to us with a certain budget. We designed something around what that budget to us meant, and then the plan gets inflated, and then the reality of a pre-planning cost report, which was kind of something we always kind of take on before we hit the statutory green light. You know, you kind of it sort of brings a sort of a sharp sense of reality. Now the project is on hold while that budgetary deficit is kind of considered, but it is, you know, we were really excited about the design. We felt that it was something that could really work in its location, but it's amazing that you work, and then something that you've kind of been describing to a client or you know, in terms of budgets and things like that and how realistic things are comes to pass, and then things have to kind of, you know, slow down a bit. Now we're still hopeful that it gets built, which is kind of positive, but just not yet.
Yeah, and likewise, there's another one that's still ongoing in the office, another rural house in Connemara, quite a large scale one, kind of just coincidentally with the last project. Both clients now live in the Middle East and are planning to move back to Ireland in the future. But I suppose one of the things that, you know, I suppose when we were putting these slides together that we found intriguing, we just analysed the projects we've had in the office, or the shared projects we've had since sort of roughly the middle of 2017 or middle of 2018 till now, and that there's a surprising number of them. There's nearly 50 in total, between large and small ones, and of that, 30% of them are now built or on site. 30% of them are probably in this lands between Connemara and Cavan that are either to be built or are in the process of design, and then 30% are you know, possibly dead or unlikely to happen, and it was for whatever reason that might be, but it was just an interesting analysis, and you know, this is one of the hopeful 30% that is likely to be built, and is going towards planning in the next little while. And I suppose if we flick on to the next slide, this is sort of a representation of a different route that we might be taking to maybe some other firms, in that and there are lots of firms doing this kind of thing also. We're looking at how we get ourselves into a position of control in some projects, and some self-led projects. So these are two projects that we're working on in the office at the moment. The one on the left is a concept for a distillery in Limerick, and that's one that we're involved with on an equity basis with the Limerick Distillery Company, and we're sort of working on that in a joint venture way, to see how we can get it built. from day one. So we're involved in the feasibility study and development of the business plan around that. And then on the right hand side is a block of 5 apartment units in Fisborough with some commercial space that we're again, you know, we have a stake in the site on this project, along with our colleagues in Fishamble Architects, St. John Walsh and Gillian Brady. So that's a sort of a shared project between 2 small offices that again is in the planning process. And we're waiting to hear on that quite soon, but we're quite excited about that one. And it's an interesting position to be in as an architect to be able to take effect on something from day one, from the inception of the business plan to hopefully the ultimate completion of the built works, and even beyond that into the maintenance of the build works. So that's an interesting route we're taking, hopefully.
And I suppose we're coming back full circle then with this is the Bishop Lucy Park competition that we put in an entry. We did this with Jenny O'Leary at Howth Architecture. Really interesting process. It's kind of really nice to go back to that really early days of drawing, imagining, then getting into the sort of the self-criticism, and that kind of emotional roller coaster you take when there's kind of lots of people involved, kind of talking to each other, criticizing in a very constructive way always. But it's kind of it's nice to kind of go back to that and sort of maybe find yourself that maybe some of the built work is allowing you the freedom to kind of partake in this type of work. And we kind of, I suppose we hope to be doing a lot more of this type of thing.
Yeah.
I suppose it's one of the realities for small new practices where the public procurement system isn't geared towards getting us larger commissions, or us to kind of be competitive in a process for those. So I suppose we find that this type of work is probably our best bet to get into that. At the same time, building good personal private relationships with clients that might, you might do an extension for someone that might lead them to talk to a friend of theirs, or might lead into doing something of a much larger scale. So between sort of the more kind of self-led work and competition, they're the 2 routes that we feel are where we can be strongest and most competitive in landing the larger commission, and hopefully that can sort of bring you into a different world of and a different size of project. I suppose that's kind of where we've got to. Liam made a really good point the other day, and I'll let him sort of speak more about it, but it's more like the unbuilt projects and this kind of cathartic review of them. It kind of reminds you that the practice itself is a project, in kind of the ultimate unbuilt project. You take all the learnings from all of the proof you have of being able to build something into I suppose into future work, and making an environment here, despite COVID and all that kind of stuff, making an environment here that people are kind of happy to work in, be creative in, and hopefully get some nice work out. So I think that pretty much covers everything, Roland.
Great, thanks very much. That was just over 10 minutes, but really great journey. Fantastic journey through your work over the last 10 years. I just had a couple of questions for you. So we've heard from yourself, James Casey, and Liam McInerney. Who else is on your team?
There's 5 of us in the office now. So we kind of from early doors. Alexandra Pickerel has been working with us, and who's a part 3, and she's actually a studio tutor down in Waterford now. And we have 2 other part 2s at the moment, Kevin Sweeney and Porrick Ferry, who joined. Kevin's been with us for about a year, and Porrick about 2 months now. And previously, Dara Doyle was a part 1 who worked with us for a little while. So it's a small team, but at the moment quite expansive, because we're spread over Dublin now. Everyone's working from home at the moment, and so far so good. Really great group of guys who are working with us. Great,
really clued in, really creative. We can very much feel we're getting to a position where delegation is actually becoming a little easier. I suppose we'd always try and keep as much control over projects as we can. But obviously with growing workloads, if you have a team like that behind you, it just makes that kind of transition much easier. So great guys to work with.
Yeah, I suppose one thing that you probably noticed in nearly every slide here is that, well, the majority of slides here is we kind of collaborated with a lot of people on a lot of projects over a lot of years, and generally people that we were in university with and things like that. So, you know, we're trying to be quite flexible about, you know, what we can take on, and if a larger project comes in that maybe, you know, is possibly that bit too big for a small 4 to 5 person office. You know, we have plenty of resource out there with other people that we work with to hopefully draw in and work in a sort of an imaginative way to make it work between, you know, maybe 2 small practices or our practice and a larger practice or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of your unbuilt work. We look forward to seeing your built work, and we hope to have you back to the AAI in the future.
Very good.
Your work. One last question is, what are your hopes for 2021?
I suppose maybe just getting back to work, in a sense that where we can be in the same room together, have those creative conversations one-on-one. It's again, we sort of said a lot, the proof is in the pudding. So, you know, it's the unbuilt work is really wonderful to kind of give yourself a snapshot about what's working, what's not working, but the proof is in built work. So the more built work we can get done over the next year, we have a number of projects on site. If we can get them completed successfully, that'll be, you know, that's really the goal. Just get as much built work made, and get it out into, you know, the public domain, see what people think.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll check out your website. We'll send you links online, and we'll post this to all our audience, so we'll get to know your work a little bit better. So thanks very much, James and Liam.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks
so much.